And I would like to call upon Chaplain Chomane to please step up and continue with the SAPS ceremony. Before that begins, there is a lost and found. Anybody who's lost their glasses, please come through and get them.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Much appreciated. The President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, Cabinet Ministers, Deputy Ministers, and Honorable Members of Parliament present. All Premiers present, especially the Premier of the province. Chief Mourners, Police Mourners present, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. As the Program Director has indicated in the beginning, this marks the beginning of the police ceremonial proceedings in honor of the late Deputy Minister of Mineral Resource and Energy, Ms. Bavelile Hlongwa. The proceedings are going to be conducted according to prescribed police ceremonial honors. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to invite to the stage the appointed marshalling officer, Captain R.P. Sebola, to explain the proceedings. Captain Sebola, please ascend the stage.
Thank you, Chaplain. Our President, His Excellency, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, the Cabinet Ministers present and Ministers, Members of the Parliament, the Premier, the Chief Mourners, Police Mourners, and ladies and gentlemen, the procession will go as follows. First, we'll call the pallbearers forward to take a position on the side of the coffin. They will carry the coffin out, led by our chaplain. Behind them will be our chief mourners, including the President, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, followed by the police mourners, and you, ladies and gentlemen, will be requested to stand when the processions move out. You will remain standing until we are all out. I will now call our warrant officer to march in the people to take up position. Warrant officer, please.
So I'll just stand and we'll narrate. Well, that brings us to the end of part 3 of this official funeral of the Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources, Bavelile Hlongwa. Members of the South African Police are now preparing to take her casket as it will leave the Durban ICC en route to Chesterville, to the Heroes Acre Cemetery, where she'll be laid to rest. We've heard moving tributes this morning from her family members, her brother and her sister, tributes from her colleague, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Mr. Gwadamantash, a tribute from Bavelile Hlongwa, speaking on behalf of the ANC Women's League, and of course the eulogy that was delivered by the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise.
As we remain on these visuals, let me now bring in my guests, Sis Precious Banda, who is representing the Young Women's Desk, as well as Mika from the ANC Youth League. I saw you both at the memorial service this week. And just remembering, Sis Precious, today we have both been here, part of this ceremony, a difficult moment, I understand, for many people that we've been speaking to from this morning. I know for you particularly, you are part of the leaders of the ANC Youth who brought in her casket today for this final ceremony. As today, yourselves as leaders, you've come to say farewell.
It's a very somber moment, a difficult time to leave, to see our comrade, our friend go. It is indeed true that she loved people. I was emotional to see the women mine workers come all the way from Northwest to come and say their goodbyes. She recently went to Marikana to meet with the wives of the men that passed on in Marikana to start a legacy project on how to support them. She wanted to work with women miners, she wanted to work with sex workers, she wanted to work with domestic workers, she wanted to work with farm workers who were women. Hers was a struggle for the liberation and the total emancipation of women, and she lived up to it until the very last moment.
Mika, let me bring you in, representing the ANC Youth League. The memorial service, you were one of those as well that spoke, and we've been hearing the speakers here today, how passionate she was and an advocate for young people. Today, when we see young leaders in government, she was one of the youngest members of the National Executive. You were all saying that she was very much part of pushing for that 40% representation of youth.
I think most importantly is to note that she died the way she died, assisting people. That is exactly what Bavelile was. She was known for helping young women in particular, but female Africans in general. She was very passionate, even in the National Executive Committee where we led. She would not flinch to stand up and say against men, no. And she would really persuade us to go towards a direction where female women young women would be favored with our decisions that we took. She would lobby the African National Congress to do everything that possibly they could to favor women. And she had an elaborate way of saying young women must be at the forefront of liberating South Africans.
But also when it comes to issues around what the ANC policies were, we've heard about how she wanted to ensure that around the debate of land, she fought fearlessly for that, the economy as well, growing this economy, ensuring that the poor South Africans do indeed get a better life.
Well, as a whip of the Portfolio Committee of Minerals, I had a first-hand experience of that. Every time we call them to account, she would speak about women in mining, young women in mining in particular, and she would be passionate about it. That's who Bavelile was. She would not finish a sentence without saying, where are women in mining, especially Africans? So the issue of land, she would couple it with the issue of the minerals beneath the soil that belongs to South Africans and Africans in particular. So she was this person who would really make sure that women, black women, are in the forefront of the economy. I so wish that she would have lived to see land redistribution without compensation. It would really make her happy that women are in the forefront of that.
Certainly. Precious, another point that we speak about her, obviously we've been talking a lot about her in her professional life, but let's speak about the lighter side of her. A lot of people were laughing when the Minister Koramantashe was speaking about their moments that they were both crazy and mad. She said to her be a very lovable, very humble individual.
She was a very humble individual, always laughing out situations, always, wanting to break the silence, even at difficult times. I remember the time we marched on the 1st of August last year. If you remember, there were 2 marches against us and the shutdown. And, she tried and did her best to intervene so that we marched together. She was our mediator, in fact, speaking to the total shutdown and speaking to us, trying, because she knew Mandisa was a leader of total shutdown. And at a time when I was very, very pissed against remarks that Mandisa and them could make against the ANC Women's League, she would just break the silence, break the situation and make us laugh. And something happened the day she passed on, that ourselves and Womandisa marched together to the JSE. That's what she would have loved to happen, and it happened the last day of her life that we marched united together to the JSE.
Okay, to you both, continue to stay with us as we monitor and watch as her coffin now leaves the ICC here in Durban, making her final journey now to her resting place. She is going to Chesterville. The Heroes Acre Cemetery is where she'll be laid to rest. She joins heroes of the liberation struggle. She will be lying next to legends, the late Bafana goalkeeper and Orlando Pirates player Senzo Mayowa, veteran journalist Nat Nakasa. And I suppose all that just speaks to the stature and the work and the commitment that Bavelile gave to the people of this country.
Deputy Minister Bavelile deserves to be laid next to heroes and heroines of South Africa. I often say, wherever she is going in heaven, she will, the first things that she's going to say is to say, can I be co-opted to the leadership that is in heaven with women? And I often say to my colleagues that if we could honor Mamu Winnie, the generation that we did not belong to, for instance, having an airport that is named after Winnie Mandela, why don't we honor Bavelile Hlongwa with naming a building in the University of KwaZulu-Natal after Bavelile, the chemical engineering building where she studied for years, and I had an opportunity to be with her in a journey of education. So I am saying, wherever she is going, trust me, she will be in the leadership position, and she is going to ask, the first question she's going to ask, are women in heaven taken care of? If there is such a thing that they are not taken care of, she will do everything to make sure that women are taken care of in heaven. That's who Bavelile is.
Certainly, she leaves behind lessons for yourselves as leaders. There's been a call from the president. We also heard the former president during the memorial service saying she has run her race. Unfortunately, she was not able to live until 120 years, as she continually spoke of. At 38 years, sadly, her journey had come to an end, but she certainly made an indelible mark, and it's now up to yourselves as leaders to take her work forward. Back to you, Precious. And I think for being a woman, a young black woman, it now rests on your shoulders to say, let's continue with the work that Bavelile did, particularly as well. She was passionate, we know, about education. There was, you mentioned during the memorial service that in her honor, there is going to be a project that you're going to continue and take forward in her. Take us a little bit about that.
The ANC Women's League and the movement in general, all mass democratic movements, have got a campaign called the Right to Learn campaign and the Back to School campaign. This is what we do at the beginning of every semester term, academic year, where we go to universities, to colleges, to assist, to broaden access and to assist new students and returning students to access their institutions. So the ANC Women's League campaign is just called the ANC Women's League Right to Learn campaign. So we are proposing to the ANC Women's League, as part of immortalizing her and remembering how passionate she was about education, that she be the Right to Learn campaign be called the Bavelile Hlongwa Right to Learn campaign. We are going to fight, because one of the things that we fought for is that women must be remembered. She was very instrumental in that. So it's not just a Right to Learn campaign. We are going to fight that a lot of things are named after her. And not only her, they are named after all women leaders that have walked the path that she walked. But for us as a generation, for us as young women, she is this symbol that we want everyone not to forget about. If you remember, the Young Women's Desk was launched in 2016, and since its launch, it has had many young women that have participated in it, and Bavelile becomes the first of our leaders to pass on like this. And that's why it's very important for us to ensure that even the young girls and the babies that are to come must know that in the struggle for women emancipation, in the struggle for their liberation, they lived a Bavelile Hlongwa, very vocal, radical, militant, and unapologetic in the struggles of women.
All right, speaking to leaders of the ANC Youth League, as the funeral cortege is about to depart now to the Chesterville Cemetery. And there, as you see coming live in your visuals, is the gravesite where the former Deputy Minister will be laid to rest at the Heroes Acre Cemetery. Of course, as we were speaking earlier, she lies next to heroes and heroines of the province, or from the province of KwaZulu-Natal, the likes of former Bafana Bafana and Orlando Pirates player Se Nzomeyi, as well as veteran journalist Nat Nakasa, and many other liberation heroes. The funeral cortege now leaving the Durban ICC arena. As the late Deputy Minister Bavelile Hlongwa makes her last and final journey to her resting place.
Young women in universities are going to remember her. She was just a phone call away. Cases of rape, cases of harassment. She spoke about the unity of women on her last day. She spoke about women being fearless. She spoke about us naming and shaming the men that violated women, so that we change the narrative to be that of the perpetrator rather than the woman who has been violated. She assisted students in institutions of higher learning to an extent where sometimes she would actually go in person at the university. She went to police stations to open cases with victims and with women that had been violated. It is a very great loss for young women and women in general.
And Mika, just hearing what Suspicious is talking about, the scourge that currently, gender-based violence, it's something, as she was saying, that Bavelile was passionate about. She wanted to see government stepping up its effort in the fight against violence perpetrated against women and children. As a man, you said that she would confront you as her male colleagues. She would call those out, those she felt were not leading by example. And it's now up to you to, as well amongst yourselves as men, continue this conversation and continue where on the lessons that the former Deputy Minister taught to yourselves as her male colleagues.
Let me say this. The last words we had with Comrade Bavelile, she was saying to me, Mika, I've bought a pepper spray and I'm going to use it. And I said, but Bavelile, you are not going to use a pepper spray on your brother. She says, people who are victimizing us every day are our brothers, our husbands, our boyfriends, and everybody who is close to us. So I don't know you. And I felt pain because she was saying that from the bottom of her heart, that she can use a pepper spray on me. And that sent a signal to say, as men of South Africa, we should start a lesson that we need to teach our children, our brothers, and everybody else, to say women must be respected, women must be valued, no to abuse at all levels. And she used to say to me, Mika, if I was to hear that you raped somebody, I will immediately say, I believe her and not you. You will explain to me later, but I would have said and issued a statement that I believe the woman. And that's what Bavelile was. And I think as men of South Africa, we should start emulating her. I know she was a woman, but taking from her would mean a lot for South Africa. We would make great strides on the scourge that we are facing as a country.
And to you both, having been so close to her, a lot of the focus, of course, has been on her speaking to her comrades, those she served with within the ANC and as well as government, but also very importantly her role at home. She was a breadwinner. We heard from her brother, we heard from her sister that even at the young age of 8 and 9 that she would always reprimand her older brothers. She was quite strict. She encouraged them to also pursue their education, but more to that, I think also the importance that she took on the children of her late siblings and was raising them as her own.
She was actually a mother. You could not spend a day with her without her not having to speak about her children, her siblings, and her own mother. Those kids were not her biological kids, but actually other people thought they were her kids because she spoke about my children, the emphasis that they were her children. And I think we got to learn something from that. Ubuntu and so on. We got to learn to take responsibility as black people. Maybe that can reduce the number of street kids that we have across. She was very, very loving, and she loved her mom. She spoke about her mom. She had plans. She had plans for the family. She was yet to move into a ministerial home. She wanted to move with the family and so on, and she shared that. she inspired her siblings to do engineering. A brother graduated in engineering and also a sister. The kids, she kept on encouraging them, and you know, she told me a funny story about one of the sons, actually the older sons among them. She told me that she wanted to have a sex talk with the son, just, you know, when an adolescent. And the boy said, I want to speak to Umalun. Then she says, no, I refuse, because I could see that conversation is going to be masculine. I need to teach him to value women. So I'm telling my boy about sex now. You know, our kids are growing. I can't believe I'm there. So that's HIongwa Bavelile and how she took her responsibility of being a parent. She called herself a deputy mother. So she deputized the mom. She knew that from her mother, she's second. You'd think she was the firstborn, and yet she had other siblings ahead of her. That's how much she loved her family. Yeah.
Mika, also humble in the position. The president also spoke on this, that although she had assumed a high position in terms of office, but she remained humble. An example to leaders that stay in touch with the communities on the ground. She was humble until the end. I mean, for the fact that a deputy minister could have stopped on the roadside when people needed assistance. And I think that is what a lot of people, even when the president began his eulogy this morning, touching on that there was something different about Bavelile. She was always a very humble, a very down-to-earth leader.
You see, Bavelile was very humble. In the line of work, she took her work very serious. I remember last Tuesday when we were having a portfolio committee, she arrived at 9 when the meeting started. She stayed up until 8 when the meeting finished. And the important thing there we noted is that not many deputy ministers and ministers do that in portfolio committee, especially when you have not called the department, you have called subsidiaries of the department. But a humble person that she is, she stayed there and gave direction where the department needed direction. She gave support to us. We were supporting her. She worked hand in hand with us through the journey. Some of us had entered the space of mineral and resources and energy without knowing anything. The language she took us through, but most importantly, I want to speak on the last point that Comrade Precious was raising. I often say Bavelile was a mother who did not have kids. She would say to fellow comrades that, hey, ingane zami zizodlani, and the emphasis on ingane zami, I would always say, Bavelile, but you don't have a kid, because I thought the emphasis would give people an impression that she has a biological kid. She says, Mika, don't correct me, because those are my kids. If you think I'm going to have a biological kid, you must think again, because those are my kids, and it ends there. That's Bavelile.
To you both, as we watch this funeral cortege now, it leaves. She's had her last services. The tributes have been